Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here with Josh from Decapitation. New album out on Metal Blade Records. Tour. You guys are busy boys.
Yeah, absolutely. We're right in the middle of this, the Genocidal Tendencies Tour. Our album came out on the 29th of November, and we got like 2.5 more weeks left of this, and then we got a full 2020 coming up, so we got a lot of stuff ahead of us. So right in the thick of it.
So let's get right into the album. I have so many questions to ask you about the album. First question that I have for you is the concept for the record. Did that come in once you guys walked into the studio, or did you guys work on the concept even before getting into the studio?
I write the music. Actually, when we put the music together, and I'm sure Travis has, constantly evolving sort of concepts going through his head, either by individual songs, the record overall, the look, everything. That's extremely important to him. So, we get little bits and pieces, like if he feels like, oh, okay, this song strikes me as, boom, title or whatever, concepts that go with it. We were going from like the themes of the past couple of records. We were like, well, where's this going to go? Humanity is out of the picture. So this one, he kind of did a sort of like a post-humanity, and then, had also just sort of like a general, like, it's a very bleak record. It's very much a, well, here's you had your chance. So it's speaking like as if you're still speaking to people, as if humanity's still around, but it's just like, there's all the warnings that were there and you did not heed them, kind of thing. And, don't be upset that everyone's dead. We knew this was going to happen. So I think the concept just kind of, there's like a general concept, and it kind of evolves and becomes a lot more finely tuned over the course of the writing. We'll leak him songs and everything, and he'll, be inspired by that, or just find those as, pieces that he can put together to form this greater whole of a, this more like, I don't want to say cinematic, but just kind of this singular piece, as opposed to song.
The path that humanity is on seems pretty bleak, specifically if you look at this record. Is that a point of view that you completely subscribe to?
Personally? Well, I mean, I think there's all these signs that, depending on, people can point to like, well, I don't really subscribe to this part of science. But this one, since it seems to potentially back up my personal views, then it's valid. I just, from what I'm seeing, it's, because you can take it into account, like, it's like, well, there's constant climate fluctuations throughout the Earth's history, and I think scientists would take that into consideration. I just assume they know much more than I about any of that. So I'm, even holding those, constant fluctuations in account, there's stuff that's happening that's based population and get emissions and everything that we're obviously contributing heavily to. So even if you don't believe in the complete severity of what some, just regular everyday people or experts are saying, you have to admit that, like, we're definitely adversely affecting the Earth. So I think it'd be pretty foolish to not at least acknowledge that. I think some people are like, whatever, we'll be fine. It's like a I don't know. That's almost like a more hopeless view, because then there's just no consideration given to trying to prevent it.
Almost like a self-defense mechanism
Exactly. Yeah.
Like when you blind yourself to it, so it's almost like if you don't see it, it's not there.
Exactly. It's just kind of, God, those people, anyone, it's like, people can have their views or whatever. One person that's one step to either side of you is a fanatic, but where you're at is sensible, so it's like, oh, if that's one click more than I think, it's, oh, that person's a fanatic. So it's just kind of easier to put them in boxes or whatever to potentially reinforce the safety zone that the person inhabits, like mentally, like where they feel comfortable, like, oh, well, yeah, we should really try to, recycle or whatever anyone's thing is. Oh, but all that other stuff, that's just crazy talk. Or, they equate it to like, from the like 70s and 80s, like the Earth First, like, spiking trees or people tying themselves to trees and all that, whether that, how effective that was or not. But they'll just, find the most extremist, and, lash everything to that. And it's like, oh, well, this is all in one box now. This is all ridiculous because of that. So I think that kind of that's a universal human trait to kind of do that, to sort of, here's my blankie, it reinforces it's your sense of self and, validates what you're about. So that's unfortunately part of the human condition. And in this case, it's going to work very adversely towards everyone's future.
When you look at the record, even if you take the lyrics out of the question and you look just at the music, strictly at the music, the album feels very intense, very emotional. Even if you don't take consideration into the lyrics, just if you're listening to the instrumental tracks, it just feels extremely emotional, and it gets more emotional as the album progresses. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, I think whether we, we're very into like song order. I know a lot of bands, and I don't mean like bands, and like I don't have anyone in mind at all, but like just kind of, here's a collection of songs, oh, this one starts brutal, or we try to make it like this is a statement. There's peaks and valleys, but there's a coherence to it. There's a constant sort of stream of energy or vibe or mood, and that's just very much when we're writing, and then obviously when we have all these songs, agonizing over it, and discussing it amongst ourselves what's the the best order. But I think on this record, more so than the past couple, we've been with maybe a couple songs fudged here and there as far as order. Everyone's pretty much on the same page, which was great, because it seems because of the way the songs unfold, it seems like a very logical thing. So we were all definitely, okay, here's the bookends, and then boom, 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 so that was pretty much a thing that there was no argument on, thankfully.
That takes me to my next question, which is the album structure and the way the tracks were structured in the album. I felt that you guys introduced these, I like to call them bridge tracks or intro tracks, and they kind of worked almost like chapters, like allowing the listener to feel like there was another chapter in the book, and the whole album almost feels like you're reading the history of mankind from a different perspective. Maybe like if we put it in a capsule and we send it into space, and aliens pick up this capsule and they look into it, the album feels like that story. Was that something that was really important in order for the whole album to work as a whole?
Well, I think when you're in the midst of like the recording process or whatever and laying it out, like me personally at least, it wasn't something. I mean, they're spread strategically. They're it's like at this point they're not just jumbled up or whatever. So there's obviously definite thought in that. But as far as how I looked at it, I was just like, oh, it's just these sort of breaks, and it continues to just the mood is set. But now that you mention that, and then when we actually were laying out the record for vinyl, like X amount of time on this side and whatever, it worked perfectly with those portions being like these sort of, as you mentioned, like introduction of a new chapter. So, maybe Travis had planned that out the entire time, but for me it was like, oh, this is the coolest like accident that could have happened. So, and someone, I was reading a couple reviews, people had mentioned that. So yes, that's what we intended the entire time.
Is there a specific track on this album that's extra special to you, that just has perhaps a message, or the sound, or the way the track put together, or with the state of mind you were in when you created it? Is there one that's above all others that speaks to you?
I think I would have to say probably, I mean, I couldn't pick one, but I think the last, like I probably myself or Travis has mentioned this in other interviews, but like the last 20 minutes of the record, which starts with Time's Cruel Curtain and goes into the Inerasable Past and then Death Atlas, that like to me is like, it's three separate songs, but it just kind of is this entire block of like, that is the sort of peak of the mood that we were trying to establish, and it just is this steamroller of like, bum-outedness. And the way Death Atlas ends, it has like, he comes in with his vocals, and then he elevates it, and then Laura from Igor comes in at the end with her super soaring, dramatic vocals. That is just, to me, that's probably just the way that ascends, and just the mood just elevates. That just is probably the best thing we've ever done. I know that's, old school grindheads will not agree, but it just, to me, that's just like the, okay, we're done here, portion. So I'm really proud of how that sequence came out, and how everyone we all kind of unified on that, and it just works really well. I think that's one of the parts that I feel is most successful in the record.
It felt to me almost like at the end with Death Atlas was a song that was like the curtain coming down on the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it's the longest track with all the, it's a very big outro attached to it. So we knew it was this big bombastic, like, da-da, kind of outro. But, once again, when you're writing and recording this, you're thinking of it in like, well, okay, personally I have to do this, this, and this. And everyone has their little grocery list that they put in their head. You're thinking of it in the grand sense, but that seems to take it's been secondary to like, whatever the matter in hand is. But like, you step away from it and stuff, and it's weird because you make some of these decisions like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and you're just rattling stuff off, and then you step back, and you're like, oh, those were actually the right decisions that we made in those snap little judgments. So I think it's just everything is so, your priorities get so just distilled down to this thing, and then you don't have to surround it with this big cloud of contemplation like I do with everything. But in this case, it's like survive, 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 and then it turns out right. So we're very happy about that, because I think, as you did say, it feels like a curtain is drawn and just boom, finality.
I want to ask you just a couple of questions about the tour, and as it relates to the album. How much of this new album is going to be part of the set list on the tour?
We're doing currently 5 of the songs, I think. 6, actually, if you count Inerasable Past. So, yeah, it's a big portion. I mean, we do a few others off Anthro and some mono stuff, too. But, I mean, yeah, I think there's like 6 songs from Death Atlas. We do the whole big outro as it goes on the record. So I think that works. People, although the only downfall sometimes people think at the end of Death Atlas, like that's the end of the set. And technically it is, but we will play another couple songs if people want that are not from Death Atlas.
Last question for you, because the sound check is kicking us out. What has been the fan reaction to the new tracks when you guys play them live?
A mixture of that sort of, like, the dog hearing a bell. It's like, that, I mean, they may have heard the online version or whatever, but, that and the live, I hate to say experience, but the live, sort of presentation or how they're, feeling that sometimes differ greatly. But, I mean, even like, say, like, we released, Bring Back the Plague and One Day Closer to the End of the World months ago. Those two definitely, like, there's people that know the words and are singing along, and there's even guys that, like, or people, whomever, that songs that were just, this is like right when the record came out, or very soon after it came out, already knew the words to, or maybe they were just miming very well, which has happened before. But yeah, Words of Death Atlas, or Geocide, something like that. So I mean, Geocide has that big, like, very death metal-y, fuck the future, fuck all mankind, that kind of thing. So of course people are going to be all about that. But yeah, just like stream of, like, the verse on the song Death Atlas or Times Cruel Curtain, the people are just right along with at times, and it's like, that's really cool. I mean, it's how many, aside from like clencher moments or this sort of thing in death metal songs, how many times do you see that? It's usually like, some song about dead people, whatever. But I'm glad it resonates with people enough to where they're like, one, looking at the lyrics, reading them, hopefully digesting them, and taking into consideration what's being said, but also that the music that goes along with it and how the vocals play into that are impactful enough upon them that the combination of those 3 things resonates, where they're just like, it's implanted in their head and they're feeling it enough to, like, be able to have that exchange. And it's just great for us to see that. That's super satisfying.
Josh, thank you very much for your time today. For those of you watching, I'm going to be putting the dates of the tour on the description of the video, so make sure you catch these guys on the road. The album is out, Death Atlas, on Metal Blade Records. Go pick it up. See you guys.